one of my other hobbies. Oh, all right, we're recording. Got it. All right. Let's see, got it. So yeah, besides the being the editor of the Sky Calendar and the production coordinator here at the Abrams Planetarium, I'm also the curator of the Moist Towelette Museum, which you can come visit. And I can kind of quickly turn my camera around, and you can see the Moist Towelette Museum, which is my collection uh, of moist towelettes that are available for people to come and look at. It's just kind of a silly little thing that I do. But I thought this group might. Oh, my camera just went out of focus there. This group might be interested in these towelettes uh, that I have. These I'm trying to get it so the light isn't shining on them. So these are some Star Trek towelettes from the original motion picture. Uh, and The directions say to tear open packet. Let me see if we can get it right there. Tear open packet, unfold towelette, and use. Good thing they told you how to do that. You would not know otherwise. And we also have the box that they came in. So that's kind of an interesting little collectible right there.
I love it.
So anyway, that's getting off topic a little bit. But so so I make the Abrams Planetarium Sky Calendar, and what that is a publication that we create and send out to subscribers. And right now, I think we have about maybe 4,000 subscribers across the country that get this, and we mail them out. It's a quarterly mailing, so we do 3 months at a time, and there's 4 mailings a year, so you get the whole year. And the front of it is a calendar, and there you can see the February sky calendar. And on the back of it, we have a star map, that just kind of shows the evening sky for that month. I don't know why my camera keeps focusing and unfocusing, but there we go. So um, so that's that. And when we mail them as folded. And so we always get a whole bunch of them printed in folded and unfolded formats. I guess I keep moving in and out from the camera. That's what keeps changing the focus on. But anyway, so I do the sky calendar, and it talks about what's up in the sky. And you can go outside and look up. But one of the things that I always try to explain to people, so many people nowadays, I say, oh yeah, you should read our sky calendar. It tells you what to look for up in the sky. And people will say, oh, I have one of those apps on my phone that I can just point it to the sky and see what's up there. And yeah, those are cool and those are good, but it's different than from what this is, because those apps, they'll help you identify what you see up there in the sky. So like maybe some of you last night noticed there was a bright star next to the moon last night. Did anybody see that last night? It was a little bit clear here in Michigan, and there was a bright star next to the moon. So you could use one of those apps on your phone to identify it, or you could identify it with the sky calendar. But what this does that those apps don't do is it tells you what interesting things are coming up in the future, so that if you are, if you pin this up on your refrigerator or bulletin board or something, or keep it handy, you can kind of plan ahead for like, oh, there's going to be a really cool thing that I'll want to watch for and look for. There's going to be some planets that are going to be passing each other over the next few nights, or the moon is going to be near Venus on such and such a night, and that'll be a really scenic thing. So, those apps really don't predict and tell you what's going to happen in the future. I mean, you could probably go through and try to figure it out and do all the work, but that's what this does. It does all the work for you. So this is something that I highly recommend everybody get. But anyway, let me start my little PowerPoint that kind of talks about some of the things that are happening in the sky coming up. And then, so the first half, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up, some of the astronomical highlights. And the second part, I'll tell you a little bit about how I produce these things and how we create them. So let me see if I can properly do the screen share. Let's see. Do that. Now, are you guys seeing the my title slide there?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, astronomical highlights 2024 and beyond. I might also mention that the Abrams Planetarium this year is celebrating its 60th birthday. And so this is it was 1964 when the planetarium opened. So this is the 60th anniversary of the planetarium. So we're having special celebrations and stuff like that happening throughout the year. But anyway, let's see. Here we go. So there's just a picture of the sky calendars that are the current set. As I said, we do them 3 months at a time, 4 mailings a year. And I thought I would kind of zoom in here on what's happening in February. There you can kind of see a close up. There's there's the calendar in the main part there, and then there's the left column that just goes into a little bit more detail. Now, the sky calendar was started by Robert Victor, or Bob Victor, we call him, and he is still around. He lives in California during the winter months and comes back to Michigan in the summer months. But he kind of handed off the writing of the sky calendar to me about 10 years ago or so. But he still likes to be involved with it, and he still kind of proofreads it when he can, and often will ask if he can write the left column of the sky calendar. Now, Bob is a wonderful guy, but he definitely likes to write and puts a lot of information on there. Me, I'm kind of the other way. When I'm writing that left column, I struggle sometimes to find enough stuff to fill it. So if you do have a subscription to the Sky Calendar, if you see a really small font on that left column and everything's really crunched in there, Bob probably wrote it. If I've if if it's a larger font and bigger margins, I probably wrote it. You can easily tell the difference. But we usually have about 300 words that we expect to have on that side left column, and Bob will send me 400 or 500 words. I'm like, Bob, you got to edit it down. Anyway, let's see what's happening here in February. I guess as you know, some of you saw last night. I don't know if I move the mouse around. Is the mouse showing up on the screen there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess last night, we had Jupiter next to the crescent moon there for February 14th. And so here's this little box right here is showing February 14th through the 16th, 2 hours after sunset. You can see that tonight is the 15th. And so the moon right now is right next to the planet Uranus, although you would need to have a pretty clear sky and a good pair of binoculars or telescope or something to see it. My mouse kind of keeps disappearing there, I guess, because it's in PowerPoint mode or something. But anyway, there you can see that. And then tomorrow night, the moon is going to be near the Pleiades star cluster. And so that's always very scenic when you have the moon and the star cluster close to each other. So that's something that's happening. Looks like, let's see, I guess, in the morning sky right now, we have Mars and Venus that are going to pass each other. And their minimum distance, the day they're going to be the closest to each other, is going to be February 22nd. So that's next week, week from today. But Venus is pretty bright. Mars right now is very faint. Uh, if you really went outside, it would be pretty difficult to spot that, I think, because they're both very low and close to the horizon. And, they're not going to be real easy to see. But if you have a clear sky and if you're a morning person, you go out those 3 mornings, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week, you'll really notice how those planets change position from one day to the next. Whereas Mars will be right down below, Venus, and then it'll be kind of to the lower right of Venus, and then it'll be to the right of Venus the next night. So that's a little bit about what's happening in February. March, what do we have? They have oh, there is an occultation that's going to happen. If you scan that little QR code that's on there, it'll give you some information about the times and things when that occultation will be visible. An occultation is when the moon passes in front of a star or a planet, and it will pass in front of the planet Antares. I think I might have more to say about that in a little bit. Trying to think, there is a down at the bottom there. You can see there's a penumbral lunar eclipse on March 25th, and that is not a real exciting eclipse, but it is a type of eclipse. Looks like March 19th is the first day of spring here in the northern hemisphere, and so that's always good. What we have coming up in April, something very important is happening in April, and that is April 8th when we will have the total eclipse, and that is a big deal. You really want to go and see it. If you've never seen a total eclipse, go check out this total eclipse because it's really, really amazing. All right, let me kind of fast forward here a little bit. So we have the back of the sky calendar, as I mentioned, has the star maps on it. So now let's see. Let's go through some of the things that are happening this year and in future years. There's going to be 4 eclipses that happen this year. We have a penumbral eclipse that I just mentioned in March 25th, the total solar eclipse April 8th, then a partial eclipse of the moon in September, and then an annular eclipse of the sun in October. And as you can see, there's a lot of different types of eclipses. There's the penumbrals, the partials, the total. So in terms of like how awesome they are, you've got maybe your penumbral eclipse of the moon. That's probably at the bottom. So it's not really that exciting. Even if you probably wouldn't even notice it if you even tried to look for it. And then you have your partial, I guess the worst one would be the partial penumbral. But then you have the partial eclipse of the moon. Then maybe you could go to partial eclipse of the sun, and then an annular eclipse of the sun. But like the granddaddy of all eclipses is the total solar eclipse. And that one, if you rate all these eclipses from like 0 to 10, I guess this doesn't make sense, 0 to 10, the total eclipse is like 100. I mean, it's like way more exciting and amazing than all the other kind of eclipses. So you really want to check out that total eclipse. But the penumbral eclipse, that's when the moon goes into the outer part of the Earth's shadow. So the moon would get a little bit darker, but to be quite honest, whenever there's been a penumbral eclipse and I've looked for it, I've never noticed it. I've never really been able to tell that the moon was eclipsing in that sense. Let me see. I think I have so I do have some little diagrams here of these different eclipses. Oh, and there's a website called eclipsewise.com that's run by Fred Espenak, who is also known as Mr. Eclipse. And he worked for NASA. He's retired now, but he's still very active with eclipses. But he kind of wrote the book. Well, I didn't say kind of. He did write the book on eclipses. He worked for NASA, and all these NASA websites that give all this information about eclipses and these maps, that's all work from Fred Espenak. He generated all that stuff. But here's a little diagram showing the penumbral eclipse. So this kind of double circle right here is a little diagram showing the Earth's shadow out into space. And the shadow of an object when it goes out into space has two parts. There's a darker inner part called the umbra, and then there's a lighter outer part called the penumbra. And you can see here's the position of the moon moving down through, and it passes through this penumbra. So if you were on the moon and you were looking at the Earth, you would be seeing, yeah, if you were looking at the Earth and the sun, you would kind of be seeing a partial solar eclipse. The Earth would be partially passing in front of the sun. It wouldn't totally be blocking the sun. So, it doesn't line up that much, but you just get a little bit there of that penumbral. Now, this bottom part of the diagram is just kind of showing you where on Earth you can see it. So it pretty much is centered over North America. And so anyone in this zone here would see it. If you're over here in India and Central Asia, and I guess West Africa, you would not be able to see it because the moon would not be up in the sky. And this kind of halfway point here, the moon would either be rising or setting, or rising and setting during the eclipse over here. But again, a penumbral, it's really hard to say that you've even seen it. I suppose if you had a photometer and measured the brightness of the moon, you could probably see that it's, maybe a little bit dimmer than it normally would be. All right, the granddaddy of all eclipses for this year is going to be the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. And basically anywhere in this area here is going to see a partial eclipse. But if you're in this line right here, that I guess those are blue lines. I'm a bit colorblind, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's a blue line right there. If you're in that path, you will see the total eclipse. Now you can see it goes right over Lake Erie, and it goes over Indiana and Ohio. There's a tiny little bit of Michigan down just north of Toledo that's technically in the path of totality, but that'd be better to get closer to that center line. But that is the total eclipse. You definitely want to see that. I think I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The next eclipse we have in September is a partial eclipse, but it's very minimal. This, again, you have the penumbra and the umbra, and you can see the moon just gets a little chunk of it taken out. And so that night on September 18th, again, we are favored for it. So if you're in Michigan, you'll be able to see it. But you will just see a little bit of the moon being blocked by the Earth's shadow. So not real exciting. And then we have an annular eclipse. An annular eclipse is when the moon passes in front of the sun, but because the moon's orbit is elliptical, you would be seeing the moon when it's farther from the Earth than normal, and so it would appear smaller than the sun. So you end up with this ring of sunlight all the way around the all the way around the moon. And so that's why it's called an annular, because it's an annulus or a ring of light that you would see. And those are pretty cool. They're kind of probably like the second best kind of eclipse. But again, you have to be in that path of annularity to be able to see it. So this one pretty much over the middle of the Pacific. So if you really wanted to see it, your best bet would probably be to go on a cruise or something down there to see it. But like every year or two, there's going to be some annular and solar eclipses. And here you can see some of the different eclipses that are happening. But they happen fairly often, but they cover a small part of the Earth, and you have to be lucky enough to be in that path. So you can see here the April 8th, 2024 eclipse goes right through North America. There was an annular eclipse that last year in October that went through the southwestern U.S. down through Texas. But you can see, let's see, all these blue ones here are other ones. Let's see, 2027, 2026. What's 25? I don't see the 25 one on there. It must not be one in 25. So, but yeah, you can see there's going to be another total eclipse. It's going to go over Spain and up through Antarctica, or up through the Arctic, right up there. That's kind of a weird one. Then 27, there's one that goes here over Africa. So, they do happen, but this one, because it's, you don't have to go to Africa or the Arctic or Central Asia to see it. You just have to go down to Cleveland to see it. So we're really urging people to go down and check it out. Here's another little animation that just shows the path of the shadow across the U.S. We'll let this run here. Some of you probably remember the 2017 eclipse. That went from the northwest to the southeast across the U.S. That one, the path was about 60 miles wide, where this one, the path is going to be about 100 miles wide. So if you're near the center line, it's going to be a lot darker sky than it was during the previous one. All right. Here's just another list of a bunch of eclipses that are coming up. The next one, if you missed this one in April, the next one that goes over the United States is, well, there's a couple of them. There's in 2033, there's a total eclipse in Northwest Alaska. And so if you go up there to Northwest Alaska in 2033, you can see an eclipse from the US. And then, let's see, then in 2044, there's one that goes over Greenland and northern Canada, but that comes down and goes into Montana and North Dakota. And so if you wanted to wait till 2044 and go up to Montana, you can see the end of an eclipse there. But the next kind of really big one that's going to cover a lot of the population is 2045, and that's going to go from California down through Florida and right through the middle part of the U.S. So that'll be another one to check out, but that's a long way off. Here's another picture of the 2045 eclipse. Yeah, just another map showing some of the different eclipses. 2045 is on there, and the 2044. Okay, so that's probably enough about eclipses. What other kind of things are happening? Well, oppositions of Mars are always interesting. When a planet is at opposition, that's when it's on the opposite side of the sky from the sun. And so when that happens, it's going to be a lot closer to us than normal. And you can see in this diagram, in 2018, we had a really close opposition where the Earth was right here and Mars was right here. Mars's orbit is more elliptical than the Earth's orbit. And so when we have oppositions on this side of the solar system, the distance is greater between Earth and Mars. So 18 was a really good one, and we won't have another one until that's that close, until around 2033, maybe, the next one after that. But so anyway, so the next one that we'll have will be 2025. Let's go down here. So here's a list of all the Mars oppositions. I think the 2003 one was a big deal. That one was a pretty close one. If you look at this column here showing the diameter, as a planet is closer to us, of course, its diameter is going to be bigger. And that 2003 had a 25 arc second diameter. So that one was really good. And then you can see the size shrinks a little bit and then grows again. So 2018, it was 24.3. So, a fraction of an arc second less. And then the next really good one will be this one here, which would be 2035. So, but the ones in between, they're not bad. I mean, they're still worth looking at. So, next winter, we'll have the next opposition of Mars, and that'll be 2025. So, that really kind of tells me that this year is not going to be a good year for observing Mars, because it's going to be on the other side of the solar system from us for most of this year. All right. Of course, oppositions are when planets are best viewed. So here's a little table that shows oppositions of all the different planets. Pluto, well, you need a big telescope anytime to see Pluto. Its magnitude is 14, so that's really faint. The bigger this magnitude number, the fainter the object. So Jupiter -2. So that in December, that's when Jupiter is going to be at opposition. But Jupiter, I think we just recently passed an opposition the end of last year. So Jupiter, is still fairly easily visible. And I guess with Mars oppositions, it makes a bigger difference when it's not at opposition. When it is, the bigger planets like Jupiter and Saturn, pretty much every year, when we're viewing it, we kind of see it at an opposition, and it's well placed for observing. But anyway, that's that table there. Let's move on. So the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, they would never be at opposition. And opposition is when it's on the opposite side of the sky from the sun, because Venus and Mercury orbit inside the orbit of the Earth. They're always going to be on the same side of the sky as the sun. So, they're never going to be opposite of the sun. So the time that is best for viewing one of those inferior planets, inferior just means they're inside the orbit of Earth, is when they were at greatest elongation. And the greatest elongation is when it appears farthest from the sun. And you can kind of picture probably how they're going around. The sun's in the center, you have the planets going around, and then, the planet will kind of appear to move away from the sun on the west side of the sun, and then it moves between us and the sun, and then it moves over to the east side of the sun, and then moves back behind the sun, and then keeps up that pattern. Mercury, because it moves pretty quick, goes around the sun every 88 days. Every year we get multiple elongations. And so the times to observe Mercury are going to be near these elongations, these greatest elongations. And when it says west or east, determines whether it's going to be visible in the morning or evening. Off the top of my head. Okay, well, let's see, March 25th. Let me pull out the March sky calendar here. I probably have it on there. Yeah, March 25th, I show Mercury at greatest elongation, 19 degrees east of the sun. And to see it, you want to look 1 hour after sunset. So when this elongation is east, it's going to be visible at sunset. When it's west, it's going to be visible at sunrise. So right now, Venus is really low in that morning sky, and it's going to move behind the sun, and it really won't come out from the other side of the sun, all this year. And, we're going to, it's going to be difficult to see. So we really aren't going to get a really good view of Venus again until January of next year. So it looks like, again, okay, so we had Mars, not real great year 2024 for viewing. Venus, also not a great year for observing Venus, because it's kind of on the other side of the solar system from us. But 2025 would be good for seeing Venus and Venus and Mars. Then we have another one here in 2026 in August when it gets into the east. So anyway, it's greatest elongations. What else do we have? It's always really fascinating to me when Venus is really close to the sun. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Venus is close to the crescent moon. When you have a crescent moon in Venus, that's really scenic. And this little chart here is just telling you when that is. And also we have it on the sky calendar showing Mars or Venus and the crescent moon. And again, Venus is, not real easily visible. And so even though, I have the computer that generates all these conjunctions, I have to look at, the actual sky and look at some of the other software that I have to see if it would be visible at a time when it's above the horizon. And so I know that Venus is pretty much not going to be visible through most of April, May, and June. So we really won't start to see it again um, until July and August, and then we can start looking for it then. And then it was January, then it was the greatest elongation, so it'll be visible by then. But it happens once a month, so because that moon moves around every month around the Earth, and so it's going to pass by Venus once a month. So those will be pretty good. Oh yeah, here's some pictures. So in February we had the moon Venus conjunction, February 6th and 7th, and then it happens again March 7th and 8th. But you can see um, how low it is over here. You have um, oops, you have this the last easy old moon. That means the last moon that you can kind of easily see before new, and Venus would be there. But this one is listed on March 8th, 30 minutes before sunrise. So the sky is going to be pretty bright at that point. So I don't think you'd really be able to see this moon unless you had perfect viewing conditions. But Venus would help you find it because Venus shines bright enough that it would show up, and you might be able to see that Venus right there. Let's see. Oh, and then I mentioned that occultation. I don't always do this, but whenever there is an occultation, we always like to put the link to this website that gives you the times for it. So if you scan that little code, it'll show you the times. But it just takes you to this website that shows you this little map of where the occultation would be visible. And again, that's an occultation of the star Antares, which is a star that's in the constellation of Scorpius, the Scorpion. And you can see from this diagram that the southwestern U.S. would be able to see it, Florida, Mexico. For us here in Michigan, it's just barely visible. Some parts of Michigan would be able to see it. And then, whoops. And then if you were actually at that website, you could scroll down to get the exact times of when the star would disappear and when it would reappear on the other side of the occultation. But anyway, that's just kind of an interesting little quirk that's on the thing. Jupiter and Saturn, they pass each other once every 20 years. And so they're slow moving planets. And some of you might remember back in 2020, in December of 2020, they passed each other really close, so close that within a view of a telescope, you could see both of them. But um, the next time that happens is going to be 2040. And so that is still a ways away. It happens every 20 years. Although I think in the year 2000, when it happened, they were behind the sun, so we didn't get a look at it. So 1981 was the last time before 2020 that you were really able to see it. And that time it was a triple one, where because of retrograde motion, the two planets kind of passed each other 3 times. But that's something that happened a couple of years ago. Not going to happen much anymore. There's celestial events. Actually, this information here was taken from the Harris's Farmer's Almanac. And I used to be the editor of the Harris's Farmer's Almanac, but unfortunately, 2024 is the last that they're going to be printing that. It's been discontinued. So if you, but there's other almanacs that are available. But I used to write the astronomical information for the Harris's Farmer's Almanac. But there was a page in there that that I used to write of different celestial events, and it just kind of says when, like when Venus is a morning star from January to April, or I guess it is in the morning, January 1st to April 28th, and then it's in the evening from July 11th to December 31st. And then it's the down here we've got when the planets are at their brightest. So Mars is going to be at its brightest this year from November to December. Jupiter is going to be at its brightest October to December. Get that. And then I thought this last part here was kind of interesting. So when Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are in the morning sky in July through September, Jupiter will be the brightest. But Jupiter's always going to, well, Venus is brighter than Jupiter. Jupiter's always the second brightest. Venus is always the brightest. So in this situation where you have those three planets that are going to be in the sky, you can tell which one is Jupiter because it's the brightest. And then when Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter are in the evening sky in November, December, Venus is the brightest. Yeah, kind of interesting. Meteor showers. Every year we have a number of different meteor showers that come by, and they happen when the Earth passes through a bunch of debris out in space, and that stuff falls into the Earth. The really good ones, there's two that are really kind of considered the best ones, and that's the Perseid meteor shower that happens in August. That's probably like the best. And the second best is often the Geminids, which happens in December. But problem with that is it's really cold in December. You don't want to just lay out in a blanket on the grass and watch the Geminids. Leonids are an interesting one. They happen in November. They're different from the other ones in the fact that the objects that cause this meteor shower are all clustered together in a big clump that comes around every 33 years. So about every 33 years, we have a really intense display of the Leonids. And then you go for 33 years or so before you get a few more years with a lot of intensity. And so it was around 1999, the last time the Leonids were at that peak. So 2033, I think, is the next time they're going to be really intense. A website worth checking out if you want to follow meteor showers is the International Meteor Organization, or IMO.net, and that'll give you some information about some of the different meteor showers. Here's just some listings. We've got the Lyrid meteor shower at Aquarius, Southern Delta Aquariids. This is just some stuff right off the website. But the Perseids are the good one. Now, one thing that I always like to try to let people know, so the zenith hourly rate, the ZHR, is listed as 100. That's somewhat misleading because the zenith hourly rate kind of tells you how intense the meteor shower would be. And zenith hourly rate of 100 makes you think you're going to have 100 meteors every hour. And a lot of times the news media that picks up these things will quote that number and say, oh, expect to see 100 meteors every hour. Well, that's really misleading. So the zenith hourly rate at 100 means that under ideal conditions, if the zenith of the, or if the radiant of the meteor shower were right at the zenith or right directly overhead, so that every meteor that came down would be in your field of view, and you were at a dark sky, perfect viewing conditions, no moon, you might be able to record 100 meteors every hour. But that is going down to like the faintest ones that are down to 6th magnitude. And again, that's assuming that the zenith is overhead, which it's never really directly overhead. So it cuts off half of that sky. So in reality, if you see 10 meteors every hour, you're doing pretty good. And so um, be a little bit cautious when you hear a zenith hourly rate listed for a meteor shower, and they and if you hear that and you go outside and you don't see that, you might be disappointed. But if you understand what that really means, then you won't be so disappointed. So meteor showers are best to just go outside, sit on a lawn chair, stare up in the sky, get some friends, everyone face a different direction in the sky, and just watch the sky and see what you can see, and be patient, to give yourself plenty of time to see it. But it's always best when the moon is not in the sky, because the bright moon makes it harder to see the faint ones. And it says that the Perseids, the moon will be 44% full. So, I mean, that's not ideal, but it's not terribly bad. Like the Orion edge, you can see it's 83% full. So, that one's going to be washed out for sure. And then the Leonids, which is the one that, has like really intense peaks. 1999 and 2001 had big outbursts. But, I guess, 2031 is when it's going to come back. But this year it's going to be 98% full for the moon. So even if it was a good peak, you really wouldn't see very much. Geminids looks like they're going to be washed out this year because the moon's going to be 97% full. Comets. So comets are somewhat unpredictable, kind of. There is a comet coming up next month that's going to be visible, but it's only going to be up to about 5th magnitude, which is like the lower edge of visibility. But it will be in the sky. It'll be kind of near Jupiter, near the star Hamel, which is in the constellation of Aries the Ram. And here's some information about it. I won't read this whole thing, but it's a periodic comet that comes around every 71 years, which is not unlike Halley's Comet, which comes around every 76 years. But when this is near the Earth, it's not nearly as bright as Halley's Comet is. It's just going to get up to about 5th magnitude, which is the bottom edge of naked eye visibility. But there's several websites that list all the comets. There are quite a few comets that will be coming by every year, and this is a list of the next 3 months of all the different comets. But the thing that is useful here, I guess, when you look at here, the nearest approach, or the perihelion. Perihelion is when it's closest to the sun. Nearest approach is when it's closest to the Earth. But you look at the magnitude column, and like this Pons Brook, they're saying that it'll be at a magnitude 4.3 in April, and it's when it's maximum brightness, which is almost visible on a good clear night without the moon. But these other ones, you can see all these other ones are really quite faint. Although here is something here. What is this one here? Here's a comet A3. I haven't really read up on that one. It looks like it has a bright magnitude, but I'll have to double check that one in September. That one may or may not be visible, depending on, it might list a high magnitude, but it also might be up in the daytime. So, we got to check that. But you can see there's a list. Most of them are really faint. So unless you're, avid comet hunter and you have a really big telescope that can find faint little dots in the sky, comets are kind of rare. But there are some comets that are really bright, and the most famous one is Halley's Comet. And a few years back, I was talking to Bob Victor, and he said that there's these 4 big events coming up that everybody should try to see if they can. And one of them's already happened. That was the Jupiter Saturn conjunction that only happens every 20 years. That's already been crossed off. And unfortunately, that was during the pandemic year. So I went out to observe it, but we didn't have any big observing events for it. Of course, then the total eclipse is coming up. That's the next big event. And then in 2040, when Jupiter and Saturn get near each other again, there's going to be a 5-planet grouping where you will have Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the moon all clustered in a small area of the sky. That's something that is very rare. I think the last time we had all 5 of them that close together was in the Middle Ages. So that was a long time ago. So that'll be pretty cool when that happens. Although here in Michigan, it'll probably be cloudy that night. But a couple of days there to see all the planets clustered together. So that'll be pretty cool. And then, of course, Halley's Comet was the 4th amazing thing. And just this year, Halley's Comet turned around. So it came by us in 85, 86. It's been traveling out into space. Well, this year, it rounded the corner and is now falling back towards the sun. And so it will be back in 2061, which sounds like a long time from now. But, the kids that come to the planetarium today, they will be in their 40s and 50s then, maybe. So, they'll be able to see it. So, they should get out there and check it out. Actually, yeah, I mean, it's 30 years from now. So I don't know. I can't do the math in my head, but it's coming back. I know I'll be 100 years old when it comes back, so I might not see it. Well, where do I get all this information from? Of course, the internet, has a lot of stuff, but also one really valuable resource is the Observer's Handbook that is published by the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. That has been around for a long time. They publish it every year. And so if you're really into this kind of stuff, this would be a great book to get. That is really worthwhile. Another book that I get every year is the Astronomical Phenomena book that's published by the United States Naval Observatory. Although for some reason I've been looking for the 2025, which should be out by now, but it doesn't seem to be showing up on the government bookstore website. So I got to keep looking for that. But that gives you information about the planets that are coming or when they're going to be happening. You'll see here's just some pages of inside of the Astronomical Phenomena book that shows all the phases of the moon, the times of the equinoxes, and all the different eclipses that are happening. That was the 2019 book. Of course, then the Harris's Farmer's Almanac was another source, although I use those other 2 books to kind of get information for this. But unfortunately, this is not going to be published anymore. But you can still get the Old Farmer's Almanac. So, there's a lot of different almanacs out there. They've got the Old Farmer's Almanac and its competitor, the Harris's Farmer's Almanac, but the Harris's has been discontinued. So, and I don't know who writes the stuff for the Old Farmer's Almanac, but it's not me. All right. And then another piece of software that I have on my computer is a program called Mica that is called the it's published by the Naval Observatory, and it just shows it lets you put in like different times and dates, and it'll calculate conjunctions of planets and other things like that. So that's kind of useful. And then I have a program called XFM that runs on Linux, and it's actually running on this computer that's behind me here. And that is a piece of software that also shows the night sky and where things will be at different times and gives you some detailed information about that. So that's kind of the gist of what is what's up in the sky. The next part, and I think we only have a few more minutes here, so let me kind of go through this kind of quick. The next part here is, how do I write these sky calendars? Well, I get a lot of the information for the sky calendar, the positions, from this program called XFM that gives me the data of where the planets would be at a particular time. And then I have this program that my previous boss wrote, that he wrote using BASIC. So I still use BASIC every day. Some of you probably remember that. I run this program called Chipmunk Basic, but it's a specialized program that was written by the former director of the planetarium that allows me to put in the month and the day and what direction of the sky I'm going to look in. And then it generates a little box that I can pull into Adobe Illustrator, and you can see this one is showing Scorpius, so we've got a couple of planets right there, and then it'll generate the box, and then I have to copy and paste these little planet symbols over some little dots that are in there that are there, and then I take that, I put it into Adobe InDesign, which is a layout program, and I paste them into the calendar, and then I put all the words, I cut and paste all the words into the calendar. And then once I have it, we save it as a PDF, send it off to the printer, and then the printer mails it, or the printer prints it, sends it off to the mailer then sticks it in envelopes, and then it gets sent off to those subscribers. So anyway, that's kind of the main thing that I had to say. If anybody has any comments, questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves, and if anyone has any comments or questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer some questions. And
I have a question.
all right.
Okay, so this is something that's been rattling around in my brain for years when I hear about the comets and the meteor showers and how they're always coming back. How are they coming back, and where are they right now? What's making them come back?
Yeah, well, I guess the short answer is gravity. So,
Gravity?
it's the sun's gravity that pretty much controls how everything moves around in our solar system. And so comets are orbiting the sun, just like the Earth orbits the sun. But instead of having a very, circular orbit like the Earth does, they have very long elliptical orbits. And so Halley's Comet will, like right now, it's out past Neptune somewhere, and it's essentially kind of falling in towards the sun. The sun's gravity is pulling it towards the sun, but because it's not pointed directly at the sun, it goes around the sun, and then the sun's gravity kind of whips it around, and it tosses it back out into space, out past Neptune again, and it takes 77 years or 76 years for it to do that long elliptical orbit.
So the sun's gravity makes it do that. Does it actually have different speeds that it's moving?
Yes. When something is closer to the sun, it moves much faster. When it's farther from the sun, it moves much slower. And so, like, when Halley's Comet is way out near the apogee, or aphelion, I guess that would be the aphelion, when it's really far away, it's moving really slow, and it's taking, many years to kind of just go a little bit, but then it starts to fall back down. So it's almost the same as, like, imagine you had a ball on the Earth, you toss it up into the air, it's going to go up, and then gravity from the Earth is going to slow it down and slow it down until it finally kind of stops, and then it starts to fall back down and
Oh,
accelerates again as it comes back down towards the Earth. And
okay, that makes sense. Because it got me thinking, how do the astronomers know it's exactly the same comet? So I guess they're up there, all the astronomers around the world can actually see where it is right now
yeah,
and monitor it. Is that
yeah,
what how it works?
well, nowadays with like the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope
Mhm.
and some of the other big observatories, you probably could find it if they attempted to. But it was
Yeah.
Edmund Halley, who was a friend of um, he was a friend and contemporary of Sir Isaac Newton. He was the one who, I guess, Newton did all the math that talked about how gravity is what controls everything. And then Edmund Halley had seen this comet and thought, okay, well, if my friend Newton is telling me that gravity is what's doing this, and they finally figured out the math to be able to calculate the shape of the orbit, and so he figured out that orbit from observing it the time that it passed by in his lifetime, and he realized that its orbit was an elliptical shape and that it took 76 years or so to come back. And so he predicted it would come back, on 76 years, but he knew
Right.
he'd be dead by then. And then, other astronomers were watching for this comet. It didn't have the name Halley's Comet then. And they were watching for this comet. And sure enough, a comet showed up the year that he predicted. And and
Wow, that's
I
interesting.
might also mention that we kind of got gypped a little bit with Halley's Comet because when it came by in 86, 85, 86, when it was near the sun, the Earth was essentially on the other side of the solar system from the comet the whole time it came around. It was really the worst apparition of Halley's Comet, since they've been able to observe Halley's Comet and know what it was. Uh, in 1910, it came by, and the Earth and the comet are on the same side, and the Earth actually passed through the tail of the comet. And in 2061, when it comes back, it's going to be like that again, where we're going to be on the same side of the solar system. So it's going to be very bright, very dramatic. I guess in normal appearances of Halley's Comet, it's really stunning, and it's the kind of thing
Oh, okay.
you just go outside and you look up for like a month or two, and you see it up there and say, "Oh wow, what's that up there?" And
Yeah, like we're not going to be around, but our kids will be able to be around. They'll be,
yeah,
old enough
yeah,
to
right.
that'll
Because
be
like
good.
when it came by in the 80s, unless you knew what you were looking for, and you had a friend who was an astronomer that had some binoculars or a telescope and said, "That's it," you wouldn't have seen it. But some of you might remember the comet Hale Bopp that came around in the 90s.
Yeah.
That one was a good one because that one, it was bright enough that, the average person would walk out into the night sky and look up and say, "Oh wow, what's that?" And they'd see it. And that's what Halley's Comet is going to be like when it comes back in 2061. So
All right. Thank you.
so stay healthy and check it out. Any other comments, questions?
I had a question for you, John.
Yes, Barb.
This might be in the Farmer's Almanac for all I know. If you're looking on the horizon, is there a trick for estimating altitude by degrees? Like, say, one fist is 5 degrees or something like that.
Yes. So the general recommendation is if you hold your hand out and make a fist at arm's length, your fist covers about 10 degrees.
Okay.
And so, when you see something on the horizon, if you put your hand there at arm's length and make a fist, you see something up there. If you go like 1, 2, 3, that's 30 degrees. So, and then also you can figure out, you can kind of measure your own hand too. No, point directly overhead, that compared to the horizon, that's 90 degrees. And so if you can put 9 fists from the horizon to the zenith, then that would be, a 10-degree fist. But most people on average have about a 10-degree fist.
Hmm.
So, and the moon is only a half of a degree across in the sky, which, is surprisingly small, but, our brain and eyes kind of, imagine it to be bigger than it really is, but it's only half a degree across in the sky.
Interesting.
Well,
Anyone else have any questions for John?
The sky calendar, with the little pictures that you have on it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What is like the orientation? Because you're in Michigan, but I'm in Florida. Would the
Yeah.
little pictures be the same, or?
For the most part, when all the calculations that I do for this
Mhm.
is based on 40 degrees latitude, 90 degrees longitude. And for planets and, the conjunctions of planets and things like that, that's good enough for the whole continental US.
Okay.
But sometimes when like the moon is a really, a young moon, a lot of times people want to see like the earliest, thinnest crescent they can see. That might favor the East Coast or the West Coast, or if Mercury is low near the horizon, it might be better in Florida than it is in Michigan. And so sometimes we'll say that on there. If there's something that, is better seen in one part of the country than the other, we would try to mention that. But generally, it works for, the whole continental US, and really for that matter, most of the whole Earth at about 40 degrees longitude.
What about Canada?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not too far off. I mean, we do have some subscribers in Canada. I think most of the is it true that like I don't know what the number is exactly, like 90% of the population of Canada lives within 50 miles or 100 miles of the US border or something, so most of the population of Canada, is not too far from the US. So if you live way up in, was it Nunavut? Is that the newest province of Canada? The way up there near like Hudson Bay and stuff.
Yeah, it's Nunavut. And I was up there 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe this
So,
would not work so well in Nunavut, and it
yeah.
would not work so well in Central America or South America, but
Yeah.
mid-northern
But
latitudes are pretty much all the same.
but up in Nunavut though, because there's not a lot of it's like, well, it's up in the Iqaluit. So you're able to see the sky a lot clearer because you're not getting the city lights or anything. You
Oh
have
yeah,
the Iqaluit city lights, but they're like nothing. So
right,
there you can see more stars than you could
yeah,
ever have. But
right,
like you said, certain specific things would be more difficult
yeah,
to see.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I posted a link to Abrams Planetarium Sky Calendar in the chat box for anybody who's interested in learning more about it or how to subscribe to it.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't mention the cost. There's a cost. It's $12 a year for a subscription to this, and we will mail them to your house. So that's $1 an issue, which I think is pretty reasonable. And the proceeds from that just kind of help out the planetarium. So it's, we're just a nonprofit organization that could use the money to help out, and most of the cost really just goes right back into, what it costs for us to have these printed and stamped and everything else. So
Is that the same price for Canada to send to Canada?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure of that.
Okay.
I mean, it just says $12. So $12
$12 US. So us
$12.
Canadians will have to be the
Right. Yeah, it does. But it just says $12 a year on here. It doesn't say $12 US or Canadian. So if you
it
give
would
us,
definitely be yeah, I would assume that it's $12 US and then it'll
yeah,
convert.
yeah. But if you give us $12 Canadian, I'm sure we'd probably be willing to take it. That'd be fine. Yeah, I don't really know what the international is. If you go to the website, I think there's some more information about subscribing on them. Well, if that's it, I have one other thing that I know, since you guys are, a lot of you are probably Star Trek fans, right? We have Star Trek fans here in the
Well,
audience.
yeah.
Um, I have I have a memento, or a thing that some of you might find interesting. So our star projector is made by a company called Evans and Sutherland, and they make a product called a Digistar that's a star projector. Well, when the Digistar first came out back in the 80s, late 80s, yeah, 89, one of the fourth or fifth planetariums in the country to get one of these was the Science Center of Iowa. And the that projector is now defunct, but the people that had that projector sold it after it was kind of worn out, and they had upgraded to something new. They sold it to a planetarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, and I helped reinstall it in the planetarium down there. And it came with a bunch of documentation and files and stuff that were part of the original installation in Iowa. And I have in this thing here a letter, because in Iowa, who was born in Iowa, or who will be born in
Captain
Iowa?
Kirk.
Captain Kirk. So the Iowa Science Center had William Shatner dedicate the new planetarium back in 1989, and
Wow.
is the
Oh,
contract that he wrote. And then here is William Shatner's signature on the
Yep,
contract.
that's his
wow.
signature, all right. You
Yeah,
recognize that anywhere
yeah,
after you
and
watching Star Trek 4.
yeah, and so I thought that was kind of cool, because this is a signature, but it's not like a fan signature that you would get on a thing. This is like a signature for a legal document. So
Mm,
I don't know if that's worth anything
Oh, it's worth
or not,
something.
but
That would be worth something.
yeah, it's just worth a collectible to me. So I just think it's kind of cool. But
That's cool.
It
Thank
is
you for
cool.
sharing that.
yeah, and I can tell you too. Here, this let me read off of this here. Does it say? So here it says, we understand that the fees for such an engagement will be $10,000. So he made $10,000 in 1989
Uh,
to just be there at the dedication for this planetarium.
wow.
I don't know what, I'd have to put that into an inflation calculator to see what $10,000 is today, but he made a big chunk of money on that.
wow.
And so, and I think there was even some information in here. Yeah, like yeah, I guess, he had to approve it. And it said a 30-day cancellation period, and on behalf of the appearance, the fee will be payable to Mr. Shatner 29 days prior to the event. So they had to pay him ahead of time to get him out.
Wow.
And it was
That's
probably
so cool.
non-refundable or something. So
That's
Wow.
anyway,
fun.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I thought that was I thought of, if any group or any people would really appreciate it, you guys would probably appreciate that more than
Mhm.
Mhm.
there it is. All right. Well, that's all I have for you. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Oh, very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you,
And you
John.
stop
Really
out.
appreciate it.
Yeah, if you're ever here in the Abrams Planetarium, stop in and say hello.
Yes. And thanks everyone for coming. And our next South Speaker Series event will be coming up in March, the first Thursday. And I believe it is Diania Phillips, space educator from Canada.
Oh,
Yep. And she's going to
yes.
be talking about, I believe, about growing food, the research that's underway to figure out how to grow food in space.
Mhm.
So she's a really great speaker. I'm looking forward to that event too. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's going to be posted on the YouTube channel. So if you know someone who wanted to be here tonight and couldn't, send them there to Starfleet's YouTube channel. But thanks again, John, and I'm sure I will see you at the planetarium this Sunday. I'm going to be there. I don't know if you'll be there, but I'll be there.
Probably not.
Yeah. Take days off, do you?
I do, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night and a safe one.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good talking to
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.